Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Center for Jewish History. My name is Annie Polland. I'm the Executive Director of the American Jewish Historical Society, which is one of the 5 partners that shares this building with the Center for Jewish History. I'll tell you all about the archives because I know you came here just to find out about archives tonight. So we're going to spend 90 minutes talking about it. No, I'm only going to talk a little bit about the archives. But before, I want to invite up our co-sponsor, one of our co-sponsors for the event, Dan Friedman from the Forward.
Hello, good evening. I'm taller than Annie. And I'm also English, so I'm going to just say a few words so you get used to my accent a little bit. And I'm reading from my phone, which is, I know what it is what it is. So I'm Dan Friedman, I'm the executive editor of The Forward, and I'm a former comedy writer, recovering comedy writer, I think is the right way of putting it, for The Forward's satirical twin, The Backward, which is true, backward.news for those of you who want to visit that. And I also wrote for Sacha Baron Cohen, my less talented compatriot. So the Forward is delighted to co-sponsor this series with the Jewish Women's Archive and the American Jewish Historical Association. And Annie asked me to say why we care about funny Jewish American women. Why the Forward does enough to sponsor this and to send me to that and make me to very happily come here. So why? So Amy Schumer, Judy Gold, Sarah Silverman, and the fictional Mrs. Maisel, Joan Rivers, are very funny Jewish women in popular culture. But why should we care about them? Well, first of all, there are 3 reasons. There are many more reasons, but 3 I'm going to do now, before Annie's 90-minute archive tour. So, first of all, comedy is an intrinsic part of the Jewish experience in America. In 2013, the Pew organization, their study of American Jews, only 19% of those identifying as Jewish said that you need to observe Jewish law to be Jewish. But 42% of them said that crucial to their identity was a sense of humor. Which I think the people writing the poll also must have had a sense of humor about that. But no matter how we define our Jewishness, an appreciation of Jewish humor is our common link. Secondly, so I was brought up, and I feel like I'm going to preach to the converted, and that's great, to think that women had equal rights and equal abilities, so should have equal opportunities. That clearly has not been the lived experience of even women in progressive democracies like our own. With luck, the #MeToo wave can have some effect on that, but no one can underestimate the conservative opposition to that, not least by the president who yesterday mocked the traumatized testimony of a sexual assault victim to the left of the crowd. So we've work to do. Thirdly, the specifics and the universality of comedy. As a genre, comedy is very specific. It is unlike being a lawyer or being a writer. It's unlike acting, or unlike its very close cousin, acting's very close cousin, waiting tables. No theory, no billable hours, no certification or critical acclaim work for you. Either you make people laugh or you don't. But it's also universal. It's a workplace like any other with power dynamics and politics. So what happens in the business of comedy is representative of what's happening in the rest of society. But though by its nature comedy is entertaining, it can also be cuttingly self-reflective, and it can it can point out publicly the social milieus from which it comes and the faults that those carry. So why should we care? Well, on top of being entertaining and important for equal rights, it's an article of faith for American Jews. So that's why we care, that's why we're sponsoring it, and hopefully some of those reasons, maybe just the entertaining, is why you're out tonight. And so I'll hand over back to Annie to introduce tonight's guests. Thank you very much.
I do not have a British accent. I have one from Milwaukee, which is usually on the same level. So, how many of you have seen the show The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Right? Okay. So this came out, we can clap for it. The show came out about a year ago and has since garnered many awards, Emmys, And when it came out, there was a spate of articles about it, in part in some of the Jewish publications, including the Forward, maybe the Backward, I didn't see that one, and Tablet and others. What was Jewish about it? Was it Jewish enough? What's happening? But most universally, people like this show. I like the show. And I started reading about it, wondering what inspired it, and was curious about who might have inspired this the character of Midge Maisel. And Joan Rivers, of course, comes up as one of them. And Amy Sherman Palladino, the writer, the creator of the show, as well as Rachel Brosnahan, who stars in the show, have both said they've looked to Joan among others for this. But I was curious about this broader trend of Jewish women in comedy and trying to think about how we could learn more about them. So usually when a question comes up from pop culture, what I do is something probably most of you do. When a question comes up and you want to learn more about it, you go to the American Jewish Historical Society archives, right? Like some people, what would this person do? What would Jesus do? What would you do? You would go to AJHS. And so in our archives, there are, as I said earlier, 30 million documents. We have 50,000 books that chart and that document the stories of the American Jews, starting from the 1600s, going all the way up to the present. And in this archive, among others, are the collection of Molly Pecan, Sophie Tucker, and here you can see her at a Hadassah fundraiser, 1960. And we also had images of Joan Rivers from various appearances she did within the Jewish community. She had won an award from Hadassah. We also have on an LP a public service announcement she did on behalf of Hadassah. And here is Joan receiving an award at the Larchmont Temple in 1971. And her parents actually, we'll learn later, founded that temple. And it brings us back to Mrs. Maisel. So what we wanted to do was to explore not just the history of Joan Rivers, but to kind of understand a series of Jewish women and what motivated them to go into comedy, what were the specific hurdles they faced in it, and how we can look at this all together. So we brought some wonderful people here with us to explore this question. We have Judy Gold. And we have Caroline Waxlar, Joan Rivers' niece. And one of the reasons it was so important for us to bring someone from Joan's family is that Jewishness is often expressed not just through humor, not just through food, but also within the context of the family. And so these are the perspectives we'll be looking at. What we're going to do first is look at a 10-minute clip that's provided by a third co-sponsor, the Jewish Women's Archive, which is a marvelous organization based in Boston, but you can be anywhere in the world and soak up its riches because they have a fabulous website with all sorts of material. So I want to thank Judith Rosenbaum, who couldn't be here tonight, for her participation. And this is a film they created called Making Trouble. And Making Trouble charts the stories of Sophie Tucker, Molly Pecan, who else? Gilda Radner, and others. And what we're going to see tonight is just the section that's on Joan Rivers. We're going to play that in just a moment. Before I do, I'm going to do a more formal introduction of Judy and of Caroline. Then after the clip, Judy is going to do a little bit of stand-up, a very short segment. Although we will encourage her to keep going, of course. And then Caroline, Judy, and I will have a conversation. But so Judy Gold, in case you need to know who she is, or Judy has had stand-ups. All right. Judy has been on HBO. She's been on Comedy Central. She's been on Logo. She has also written and starred in 2 critically acclaimed off-Broadway hit shows, The Judy Show, My Life as a Sitcom, which won the Outer Critics Circle nomination, and 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother, which got the GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding New York Theater, and the Drama Desk nomination for Actor. She received rave reviews playing Grameo. Okay, she's wonderful. She's been on many things, won many awards. Yeah, it does go on a lot, which speaks to, I'm just going to call Judy up, but before I call Judy up, I want to talk about Carolyn. She helps media companies like Google, Forbes, Condé Nast, and Advertising Age program their live events. Her editorial experience includes writing for television, including Good Morning America, Best Week Ever. She works in digital and in print. She's also written and ghostwritten several books, so our goal tonight is to find out which those are. And she's also, including a New York Times seller. She lives on the Upper West Side with her husband and her baby daughter, her new baby daughter, Beatrice. So we will all come to the stage, but first Judy is going to do some stand-up. Oh, the film, I'm sorry, we're gonna do the film. We're gonna do the film. I just wanted to mess with Judy a little bit.
Let's go. All right, so, no, it's great to be here. As I told Annie, I didn't want to do stand-up because I thought it would be weird after we watched this video, and I was correct. So, now I know we're all a little, I've been really aggravated lately, and I just have to say, I can't stand that orange piece of crap, number one. I can't take it. It's ruining my life. I'm telling you right now, he has ruined everything about it. I had a whole routine in the morning before he became president. I swear to God, where I'd wake up, I'd open my eyes, I'd go brush my teeth, I'd make some coffee, I'd read the newspaper, everything was fine. Since he became president, this is how every day begins like this. I wake up, I open my eyes, and then I have this inner dialogue. Don't look at your phone. No, I know, but I think something happened. He definitely did something. Judy, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do. I know, but I just got a CNN alert. We're at war. Something's going on. Judy, calm down and breathe. You can. I know, but what did he do? What did he do? What did he do now? That is how I start every goddamn day, okay? You know what I realized about him? He's the only human being in the entire world who could make American Jews want to move back to Germany, okay? Hi, we're back. Yeah. No, it was going great, but we heard you guys are sorry, so here we are. Listen, I left some artwork here. I thought maybe I could get back. Ugh, I can't take it anymore. Who's coughing? My stalker's coughing. Can you go get something to drink or something, okay? All right, leave me alone. Anyway, what else do I have to tell you? I don't know. My mother died 3 years ago. We should do mother jokes. And I do miss her. I used to tell my mother constantly, you can't die because I'll have no material, which is true. But my therapist now has the same name as my mother, Mommy. And... But what is interesting about my mother, and I have to say, she spent the last years of her life at the Hebrew Home for the Aged because we were kosher, and we had to find some place that was kosher, which was really annoying because my mother was like neurotically kosher when I was growing up. If anytime, say I by mistake I picked a meat spoon for ice cream, after I got struck by lightning and woke up from the coma. My mother would, bury these, utensils outside. But then in the wintertime, she didn't want to go outside. So she'd put them all in our house plants. So, people would come over for dinner and be like, oh, my God, what a beautiful ficus tree. Why is there a fork sticking out of it? And I'm like, don't ask. So she'd spent her last days at the Hebrew Home, and there was a guy there named Harold, which coincidentally was my father's name, who used to visit her every single day in a row. He loved her. And the thing about Harold was there was something wrong with him. He'd walk around like this, and I'd walk in the room, he'd be like, Judy, how are you? So nice to see you. And my mother would be sitting there going, get him out of here. Get him out. And I'm like, Mom, what are you talking? He loves you. He's here voluntarily. We have to visit you, okay? And she's, he's stealing my New York Times. That's the only reason he's here, is because he wants every time. So I'd walk in one day near the end of her life, and I would always bring a whole list of questions. And I walk in, and Harold's in there. He's like, Judy, it's so nice to see you. Your mother and I were just watching a movie. I said, really? Was it on the floor? I didn't say that, but I thought it. So he leaves with the arts and leisure section, right? And I'm talking to my mother, and I said, Ma, I always wanted to ask you this. If you could have married anyone in the entire world besides Daddy, who would you have married? And she sits there thinking and thinking, and finally she says, Dean Martin. And I said, Dean Martin? Ma, he wasn't Jewish. Oh, Judith, it doesn't matter. What? It doesn't matter. I left there, I had a pork roll with shrimp, lobster, cheese, and a priest, okay? And I shoved that thing down my throat. It doesn't matter. I didn't have an Oreo cookie until I was 25 years old, okay? Hydrox. Have you ever eaten a Hydrox, you young people? I never had a Twinkie. No, I had Vienna fingers, okay? They're for 500-year-old people. Yeah, so now no one eats a goddamn thing, which is ridiculous. Do you have friends like this? That, like, let's go out to eat. Oh, I don't know if I can get some. It's good. You're not my friend. I can't take it anymore. I was literally having a conversation with a thin person the other day. Thin! And we're in the middle of the conversation. She goes like this. Oh, my God. I said, what's wrong? Are you okay? No, I'm sorry. I just realized I totally forgot to eat today. What are you talking about? You forgot? No one forgets to eat, okay? That's like forgetting to pee or forgetting to breathe, okay? Not once in my life have I ever forgotten to eat. I mean, I've forgotten to not eat, but I have not forgotten to... Really? Nothing on the not eat? Okay. Yeah, it's really ridiculous. I can't stand it. And everyone has, like, a food issue. Like, do we have any lesbians here? Do we have any? Okay. One lesbian? Oh, it's Court. Where's Eddie? Oh, hi, Eddie. Oh, my God, why didn't you say hi to me before? Who are you here with? Carla? Hi, Carla. Who's that guy? Okay. All right, so, yeah, I don't feel uncomfortable with silence. I'm just letting you know that, all right? But you cannot going out with a bunch of lesbians for dinner. It's like going out with a bunch of Jews. I'm not kidding. It's like the check comes, and then one of them is always like, I only had the soup. I'm only paying for the soup. I'm not paying for her alcohol. Ah! Okay. But what I don't understand is, okay, what these militant people with that, like they stop eating something and then everyone else has to stop, like the non-dairies. I cannot stand the non-dairies. And where did that come from? What did someone have a bad cup of milk, a bad piece of cheese? Is like, I'm never eating dairy again. Everyone at some point in their life has explosive diarrhea and smelly farts. Okay, you don't give up an entire food group. Okay, I'm sorry. The busboy didn't wash his hands correctly. It's not my fault. But these militant people who come up to you and are like, Judy, I just want to let you know, I gave up dairy recently, and my whole life is different. Seriously, I'm lighter. My mood is better. I have no inflammation whatsoever. I'm telling you, everything around me has changed. It's really been such a journey for me. Judy, you're very irritable. You might want to start, thinking about this. Judy, you know how your car got broken into 2 weeks ago? That wouldn't have happened if you weren't eating dairy. It's God's way of telling you, you've got to... I can't take it anymore. Do you ever go to like a wedding or a bar mitzvah, and you're sitting at the table, you're with your partner, your spouse, your lover. Does anyone use the term lover anymore? I can't take that. Hi, this is my lover, we're lovers. All that does is make the person you're talking to imagine you guys having sex. That's all it does. So you're at a table, right, and you meet this other couple, and you're hitting it off, and you're like, oh my God, you're talking, you're going through the cocktail hour, you're dancing, you realize, oh my God, you live in the same neighborhood, and eventually you're like, oh my God, you guys are so fun, we should totally get together, you're just the great, and you live right in the neighborhood, you'll come over for Friday night dinner, I make the best roasted chicken, and they're like, oh my God, Judy, we would love that, but we should let you know, actually, we're vegan. Oh, well, that's fine. Just, let me know what you guys eat. I'm happy to prepare it. I love to cook. That's really sweet, Judy. Listen, don't bother. We're so much better than you on so many levels. We're probably going to swim about 6 miles up the Hudson and then ride our bikes around Central Park a few times and then jog over to your place. So you prepare your dead cow, your dead lamb, your dead chicken, your dead fish, your dead turkey, whatever else it is you people eat. And we'll just stand there and stare with our skinny bodies and judge you and... Try not to bring up binge watching anything. We got rid of the cable years ago. It was just ridiculous. And actually the other day I said to her, we should just get rid of the television altogether. It's such a waste of space. Shut up! I hate you! That's what we're turning into. That is what we are turning into. And where are my gluten-frees? They are the most annoying human beings in the entire world. The gluten-free. Are you gluten-free or you're just annoying? They're annoying. And I'm not talking about the celiac. I'm talking about the ones, oh, I stopped eating gluten. Let me tell you something. Every time I bump into a friend who's gluten-free, they're always eating some sort of cake or brownie. And I'm always like, wait a minute, I thought you were gluten-free. Oh, I am, Judy. Well, what's that? It's a gluten-free brownie. Oh, really? Well, what does it taste like? It tastes exactly like a regular brownie. Really? Wow. Well, what's in it? Well, there's no eggs, there's no butter, there's no white flour, there's no processed sugar, there's no chocolate. Try it, Judy. Tastes like a piece of cardboard with black Sharpie on it, okay? And you're fat. Have you noticed you gained weight since you started this bullshit, okay? Your fried rice and your tortilla chips every night. I'm on a plant-based diet, actually. I smoke pot and then I eat. And it's such... No, it's a really... All right, I gotta go. But I should, Joan talked about her relationship. I'm in a very, I'm a lesbian, and I'm a proud member of the LGBTQ or STUVWXYZ community. It's ridiculous. We gotta stop taking people. It's like ridiculous. It's like we take anyone at this point. It's like, oh, you like to have sex with your shirt sleeve? Come with us. Come with us. No, we're gonna get you the shirt sleeve on your lease. Don't worry about it. But I am a menopausal lesbian in a relationship with another menopausal lesbian. It is the worst. I can't take it. And she's a therapist, which is the worst combination. Because nothing I say is benign, and no fight ever ends. It's ridiculous. It's like, we'll have an argument, and then, a little while later, it'll be like, do you feel like we resolved that, Judy? And then even later, oh, Judy, I really feel like I need to process just a little more, just a little... Really, Elisa? I was just about to sit down with my book and a latte, and I was thinking, oh my God, I really hope we can rehash that fight we had 3 days ago about how I watched an episode of The Crown and didn't tell you, which makes me a compulsive liar and is the reason none of my friends trust me. So if we could talk about that ad nauseum for the rest of the evening, I would really, really appreciate it. Here's the other thing. When you're in a relationship at the beginning and everything the other person does is like, you just love, like everything's cute. Now, Elisa, initially, there were few things she was doing that was getting on my nerves, but I was like, oh, I don't care because she has a nice ass. So I was like, okay, fine. But recently, this totally happened. She got sick, she had the flu, and I was taking care of her, which I enjoy. I'm a Jewish mother, And so I'm taking care of her, and this was something that kind of got on my nerves, but now I can't take it anymore. When she sneezes, okay? She literally says, achoo, okay? And really loud. It's like, achoo! Achoo! And I'm like, Elisa, that's not real. It's like a sneeze plus added crap you added in for drama, okay? I can't take it. It's not like, no one says achoo when they sneeze. It's not like when you pass gas and comes out fart. It doesn't come out like that. Cough, cough. Yawn. That gets bigger laughs in a less Jewish audience. But my final joke will be something I think we can all relate to. Now, I've been in a relationship for, it's almost 12 years, and I'm very attracted to my partner. But she can't relax. I know a lot of people are like this. I think the phones add to the, the brain is never stopping. I know she has a stressful job. But I keep a notepad next to the bed, and I wrote down things that she has said to me while we're in bed naked, fooling around, okay? These are literally things, we are naked in bed, fooling around, that she has said to me. Okay, ready? What time do I have to move the car in the morning? Oh, it's a Tuesday, Friday, don't worry about it. Do I smell like onions? Naked in bed. Okay, naked in bed, making out. This is my favorite. Do you think I'll get my biopsy results back tomorrow? All right, I thought that would get a bigger laugh, but it didn't. But no, you've been fantastic. You owe me big time.
Tell us about Joan's background. She was born in 1933 in Brooklyn. Tell us a little bit about that. And to some extent, one of the things is, does her childhood... Yes. Okay. So go ahead.
What was your question?
Does the background that we see in the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel show match what her background was?
Yeah, I mean, the background you see in Maisel is really coming in in the 50s or 60s. So, the clip.
Wow.
Awesome. So, let me take it from the top. So, in the beginning, in the movie, you guys got a really good perspective of her childhood as well. And I just ran into someone here who grew up right around the corner from her in Brooklyn and went to the same synagogue. So, you bring people together. So she grew up in Brooklyn, and in the section where she was, a lot of doctors lived, and they had a very nice childhood. I mean, my grandfather, as she's written about many times, definitely watched every penny, and as you saw, he came from not that much money, and he was even put in an orphanage back in Russia. So when he made it as a doctor, I mean, they really watched every cent. When they would go on vacations to the beach, he would calculate how much it was costing him, both the trip and the lost revenue. So, I mean, that was something that was ingrained in them. So, and then meanwhile, my grandmother would spend so much money. So it was an interesting dichotomy. I mean, I think that I still have china that she bought when she thought the Germans were going to bomb New York. Her theory was that she should buy everything she ever wanted from Macy's because they would bomb Macy's, and then no one would ever have the records. So that was a big bill. Yes. So that was my grandmother Beatrice, and I have a daughter who is named Beatrice after this lovely lady. And so Beatrice, that's my grandmother, and she definitely liked to spend a lot, and she had excellent taste. So what you see in Maisel, I've inherited so many pieces of furniture that look like the apartment in Maisel. Obviously, we're in New York, and the apartment is about 1/10 of the size, and there's a lot of checks being paid to storage units. But I inherited a lot of the furniture because when my grandparents died, Joan was living in California and had a very different style. My mom at that point was moving to Pennsylvania and had a big house to fill. So we got a lot of their furniture, and we still have a lot of the same material on it. I mean, some of it I've recovered, but a lot of it I've just put, I've kind of gotten fancy slip covers to put over it and things like that, so you can still see the original material. And it's great, and they had excellent taste.
Plastic covered.
Not plastic. I'm not saying this correctly. I mean, we have.
They're not
I'm not a
Italian.
decorator. I mean, we have like cloth covers that are very pretty, that are designed for the couch. But I wanted to keep the original covers, the original material from the 30s, 40s, and 50s because it's so pretty. And they had an excellent decorator, a guy named Louis Malkin, who actually just died this year, who really created a lot of the style. And I think I believe that the Maisel people must have seen pictures of the house or just known. I mean, the style was just very, very particular. And Louis Malkin was a genius. And he apparently also designed, as I read his obituary, for the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. But I think when my grandmother got a hold of him, he had just come out of design school. And he was great. And he also did some stuff later for the Plaza. And he just really had that mid-century aesthetic down. It was great.
And is that something that she would replicate in her own homes at any point? Or
Yes, but then Louis and Joan and my mom evolved. And what would Joan say about her own apartment? She would say, this is where Marie Antoinette would live if she had money. I mean, it was, all of the gilded stuff and a lot of gold and a lot of silk and all of that stuff. But then just in the years before she died, she was thinking about redoing it, and kind of bringing it more up to speed or up to today's taste. But yeah, if you see pictures of the apartment, it really is like a lot of glitz. I don't know if did you ever go to Joan's place?
No.
Well, just anyway, we're just. But you went to the funeral.
No, I mean, yeah, I know. I never got invited to the Thanksgivings or anything. It's fine.
And what about Jewish?
Very.
What about their Jewish identity? How is that expressed in the home? Is it something that was very important? The holidays, language.
Yes, very, very important. We had holidays at Joan's house, and before that, at my grandpa Meyer and Beatrice's house. She definitely insisted for the holidays that we all celebrate. I mean, it was just. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, we did break the fast at her house. We did Passover at her house, which was later brought out to California, and we did it at Melissa's house out there. We did Thanksgiving, and she really insisted on bringing WASP and Jews together. whoever was around and was a buddy of hers, she would bring them. So for a lot of people, it was their first exposure to Jewish holidays. So I mean, she had everyone from, who did she have? The Reagan's daughter she was friends with, you know, Patty Reagan. You know, so she would have all these people around, all of her WASPy friends and all of her Jewish friends, and then whatever, like, celebrities were in town doing a play that she was buddies with. I remember Ron Silver did a very, very good reading at Passover. You know, so I was kind of wide-eyed, and a lot of times we were coming up from Pennsylvania for the holidays. I was still in grade school and high school. Oh, no, she moved to New York. I was in high school by that point. So it was super cool, you know, to see all these celebrities and then have them reading about how they got out of Egypt. It was fabulous.
Very cool. You know, it's funny, there was a big article in the New York Times in Passover last year where a bunch of Broadway actors got together and they had someone from Hamilton doing it. It was written up as this big deal, all actors of different backgrounds coming together to do Passover Seder, but Joan Rivers had been doing that for many years.
Yes. It was a very hot invitation among my friends.
And how did, Judy, how did her Jewishness come out on the stage when she performed? You just brought out some of your Jewishness on the stage.
Well, I've been watching Joan's forever, since I'm a little girl. So I have to say that when she died, it was sort of, I was like, I've known her as long as I've known my own mother, you know, it was like, and she was my mother of what I do. So it was a profound loss. And the thing I loved about her was that she never shied away from talking about being Jewish. And when she talks about these people in Hollywood, like, you're too Jewish, that is, I have heard that from day one, and only from Jews.
Well, yeah, and that's what she said in the clip. She didn't say it was a Jewish person. She said, "Jonala, you need to tone this down."
Right, exactly. So, and it's just, you know, I had one agent say you have to dye your hair blonde and straighten it. I mean, look at my face, you know. And I did it, and I felt so uncomfortable, and the fact that she never shied away from that, and that Edgar said to her, you know, let's go to the most geisha place in the entire world, you know.
I'm from Milwaukee. I do. I must say that at least by the time I was born, it was less of a Bundist operation. Although there was a club called the Bavarian Inn that we would see on our way to Jewish day school on the bus going over Port Washington Road, and there would be rumors that at the Bavarian Club, that's where everyone gathered in the coat room. If you looked closely, you could see a picture of Hitler still hanging up there. But in general, Milwaukee was just fine. Just to for the record. But go ahead, sorry.
But I got a lot of criticism for the Jewishness that, you know, Joan got, and I feel like she was a privileged Jewish girl from Larchmont, but she was really insecure and really concerned about the way she looked, but she had her finger on the pulse of what women were thinking at the time. She was so, she was never more relevant than when she died. She knew about pop culture, she knew about the zeitgeist, she created the zeitgeist, you know, and she never, ever, ever stopped talking about or being, she was authentic. I mean, she never stopped talking about who she really was.
And that was what made her different.
I'm a Jewish girl, right?
In the 1960s.
Right. And also, but it's also like, you know, look, we're Jews, and people always ask, like, why are so many Jewish people comedians? And I think that A, it is a defense mechanism, but B, I think our religion teaches us to think out of the box. Like your bar and bat mitzvah is about taking a piece of text that has been, you know, talked about for thousands of years and making it your own. And I think that the fact that we're allowed to have an opinion, that we don't have a pope telling us, you know, and that we're allowed to interpret things, and that we have a voice, that, you know, Joan really encapsulated that. And she's short. You know, she was tiny. She was like this fierce Jewish woman, you know, and she was so smart.
And going back to that, I mean, and she did not hide that smartness
Right.
at all. And going back to the 1960s, thinking about that time, and she was told to kind of tone down that
Right.
Jewishness. Was that told to other comedians who were men? Like, was Lenny Bruce told to tone down his Jewishness? Was
I have
you name
never
it, was Woody Allen
No.
told to tone down his Jewishness? So why?
because the Jewish man was a nebbish and was non-threatening, and the Jewish woman was loud and had an opinion and was not ladylike, and that was threatening, and that's really what it was, and it still is.
Well, and it's interesting because on the film that we just saw, she talked about gay men loving her because gay men love strong women and
Yep.
they're not intimidated by them. But
Right.
of course, implicit in that statement was that other people,
Right.
straight men, were intimidated by her.
And some women
Yes.
as well.
Yes. And did she ever talk about this at home? Like, was this with the family? Did she ever talk about some kind of the boundaries that she broke or what it was like for her in the 1960s to do this on her own?
I mean, she often talked about kind of not us against them, but in a way she was very aware that there were a lot of forces out there that made her life very difficult, and that she was breaking boundaries, and she was very pro-family. We were almost all in our little boat, and she was kind of the matriarch of the family, pushing forward and pushing these boundaries and succeeding for us and to bring everyone along with her for the ride. I mean, she also she made a joke in there about Sarah Silverman. She was very aware of people coming up behind her and did not want to relinquish her post. She was very pro young comics and wanted to be around what was new and what was hot. I mean, we'd often talk about, what comics I saw or who she saw in different shows. I mean, she was up on everything. Yeah, I think there was only one time I mentioned somebody and she didn't know it. It was the comedian Bridget. My friend Jessica in the audience took me to her. I can't think.
Bridget Everett?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I told her about it, and she wanted to go. This was right before she died. I think that was the one thing I stumped her on. I was telling, we would often talk about people, and and she would be great, and she knew everyone. There was no one that she didn't know or no show she hadn't seen, except Bridget Everett. But she was very aware, and it was very hard for her coming up in the 60s and breaking those barriers. I mean, we talked a little bit about, after the Coen Brothers movie came out, about the 60s, the folk singers, about that time period. And she was just talking about being in the village and how great it was and how she had that camaraderie with all the other comics.
And there's a great story she told, too, about being friends with Lenny Bruce and doing a show where she flopped. And he sent a note that said...
Bombed, not
or
flopped.
Sorry. I flopped. And he wrote, "You were right, they were wrong."
Mm-hmm.
And she carried that with her.
Oh, she loved that, was obsessed with Lenny Bruce and just thought he was genius. She would talk about Lenny Bruce as a kid. I had no idea who Lenny Bruce was, and I learned from her.
And the REM song, was it the REM song or the Billy Joel song? The Billy Joel song that lists Lenny Bruce in it.
Where it talks about, like, as the world turns or whatever. But she did a play about Lenny Bruce's mother.
Yes.
And it was so fabulous. I remember when I was first moved to New York, it was in the 90s, it was and I still remember the theater, it was the Helen Hayes Theater. And we were so nervous for her. And it was the first time I'd seen her do something of that magnitude. I'd been going and seeing her act since I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. But just seeing her in that play, I mean, I think I held my breath for the whole 2 hours. And she was amazing. I learned so much about this strong woman, and I saw all the parallels.
And this
Between
is
Sally Marr,
Marr.
And yet,
Yes.
when she died, we fought for them to dim the lights.
And that was awesome. That you guys
But it was so. Oh, I was so upset about that, and it was sort of like a metaphor for her life,
like
because she had to fight for everything, and it was, and she had everything. She had the talent, she had the work ethic, and yet everything was such a struggle. You know?
And why was it a struggle? I mean, was it because she was a woman, she was Jewish. That she was brash? I mean, everything for her was like swimming upstream.
Right.
And it also seems like, there's one thing to think of. In the 60s, she was path-breaking.
Yeah.
And to be a comedian when she was 28 years old or 30 years old, and she was path-breaking. But then she had to be path-breaking when she was 40 years old.
Right.
And 50 years old. And it kind of each
You have to
stage.
stay relevant to
Yeah.
be a great comic. And I remember, I don't know, years ago, we were on the same television show as guests. She won.
She loved you, by the way, and thought you were hilarious.
Oh, I loved her so much. Thank you. And I said, Joan, do you realize what you did? Because I was so in awe of her. Oh, I didn't do it. I did nothing. I didn't do anything. Kathy Griffin, she's good. She produces everything herself. Don't let anyone take your money. And she would always deflect off of her. But she influenced Chris Rock. She influenced Howard Stern. She influenced any comic who was willing to say what everyone's thinking and afraid to say. I mean, she broke barriers for everyone. Here's this woman who really, she had everything. She had a great education. She didn't have to do stand-up, And yet her point of view was so specific, and she was so funny. And yet people vilified her because she was criticizing other celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor or whatever. Yeah. And yet it was all about having a sense of humor. Laugh at yourself.
What was Elizabeth Taylor's blood type?
What was Elizabeth Taylor's blood?
Ragu.
Your ragu, yeah, that's right.
And if you pierce her ears, gravy comes out, right? And there's another one. She puts mayonnaise on her aspirin.
Yeah.
And she yells at the microwave to hurry.
Let's talk
that
about that.
Put me through college.
Right.
Let's talk about that, because that is, something now that we kind of, we laugh, but we're almost, angry with ourselves for laughing, because that's such a, horrible thing to laugh at appearances, but...
I don't know.
I'm not that angry at myself.
No, I'm not either.
It's hilarious.
It's a joke. This is what people, and it's getting so bad right now. I mean, I feel like Joan died right at the perfect point. Because you can't say the political correctness and the fact that no one has a sense of humor about themselves.
You can't, yeah.
You can't say anything. People are videotaping, they're taking little sound bites, and she said this, they don't listen. No one, if you listen to the intent of the joke, instead of a word that triggers you, then you realize what a genius she was at crafting amazing jokes. They are jokes. They're meant to be laughed at.
Well, and with regard to appearance, what she would say, too, is that she knew the world that women faced. And she knew that women who didn't have a put-together appearance faced criticism.
Right.
So in her defense of her own, of these types of jokes, she's trying to encourage women to look as good as they can so they don't have to face all those barbs and insults and all of that.
I mean, it was very much projection. I mean, she'd be furious with me right now for not wearing more makeup. I think every email ended with, wear some makeup, get some Botox. XX.
But she
would pay for it, so you can't really fault her if I wanted it.
But she made fun of herself, that whole plastic surgery.
Totally.
And that was the one thing that bothered me about her, because she wasn't ugly.
But she felt compelled to have the surgery. I think that was the pressure and wanting to stay relevant in the business. I mean, I think we got in one of our few fights because I refused to have plastic surgery.
Right.
I mean, she would trick me.
Plastic surgery.
Thank you. Yeah, she tricked me one time to meet her at the plastic surgeon's office, and before I sat down, I was in the chair and people were marking up my face. I think I ran out. One time we got in a fight, but that was her way of love.
Right.
She would have paid for it.
Right.
She would have. She would.
How old are you?
I think I just moved. I was in my 20s or something. But I mean, she did do many good things. Because of her, I got an eyebrow wax for the first time. You should see the pictures of me in college. So that was her way of love. She would say, I don't like this outfit, so she'd send me to Saks and buy one.
Right.
So, not so tragic.
Right, exactly. But the fact that was so important to her, I think, was a sign of her, the way she grew up.
Her insecurity, absolutely.
Well, and she wasn't alone in that. In the video that we showed earlier, it's a series of and 6 different women, and I was looking at the different ones. Gilda Radner was one of them, for example.
Right.
And we just showed a documentary here last week or 2 weeks ago about Gilda Radner, and of course, the sad part of the cancer, of course, was the saddest, but the other part that kind of haunts her life is her bulimia and her own self-regard, that she viewed herself, Gilda Radner, she viewed herself as unattractive. Yeah. So how do we kind of work with this? This is kind of these beautiful women who are up there doing this work who are haunted by that. And I guess my question is, has that gotten better? Is it gotten better? Are the expectations different? Did Joan have some effect in kind of making the world a safer place for a variety of different looking women? Are things?
I think we should ask Brett Kavanaugh that question.
He's drinking beer.
Yeah.
He's busy. That's a really tough question that you asked. I think she tried, but I think her underlying message was look good. You know, it's your armor. Be pulled together. So I think she had a lot of respect for people who would try. You know what I mean? Whether it meant to the extreme of getting plastic surgery or just brushing your hair. I think she said the world judges you on looks. You've got to look pulled together. And that's just the reality of the world we live in.
I have to say, you know, I agree with her because, you know, I go out often, you know, I do stand up a lot and I see people, and I always put on makeup,
Of course,
and, you know, and I remember.
You look great.
Thanks. But I remember seeing, I remember once I was at Catch a Rising Star and Adam Sandler went on stage and he had sweatpants and a dirty t-shirt, and Lewis, who was running the clubs, like, he's going to be a star. And I'm like, look at him, you know? And it's just unbelievable. And I wonder, you know, I often wonder, first of all, I always wonder what Joan would say about Trump, you know? And I also wonder, what would she say about Hannah Gadsby? Or, you know, these women who are very butch and don't do anything and purposely don't do anything. You know, what is femininity? The thing about Joan was she was a woman. She owned her femininity, and yet she was powerful. Like, she had this power. Her voice and her intelligence and her comedy was, you know, it sort of belied her tiny little beautiful body.
And she loved that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Of just shocking people on stage, and, you know, kind of the more uptight, the better.
Yeah.
So.
And that quote that she has about bringing people to the edge, that she loved bringing people to the edge, and that edge was there, and that was so important to her.
No one made me laugh like her. I mean, the last time she was in Provincetown performing, and I emailed her and I said, "Oh, we're all so excited." She's like, "Come backstage in between," and we spent the in between shows backstage together. People, it's not like when you saw her, it would be like, "Oh, that's clever." People, like, just bent over. She was hysterical. She went there, you know.
And so funny off stage too.
Yes.
It wasn't just that she had written material and memorized. It was hilarious off stage.
Right.
The random comments.
Yeah.
There's a part in the 2010 documentary, what's it called? A Piece of Work.
Yes.
Where she looks at a calendar, and the calendar has nothing on it, and she said that this is the worst thing to see a kid with no. So, tell us a little bit about her work ethic.
She was so driven. And that movie came out in a period that she was less busy. I mean, her career had a lot of ups and downs, and that's what made her such a fighter. She was the most driven person I've ever seen. I mean, whenever I think I'm tired or overwhelmed, I just kind of think of her and think how busy she was. I mean, she would do a show in Vegas, fly back to New York, get up and do a full day's work, and then go right to California the next day. I mean, at the end, when she had her show and she was doing Fashion Police every week, she was commuting back and forth to California. It would be exhausting for anyone in their 30s, much less in their 70s. And then working and doing shows multiple times a week in New York, doing the Cutting Room show and then doing QVC. I mean, she was driven.
And it seemed like her happiest moments in part were being those small clubs, like going to a small club, and she would do that every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she went to West Bank.
Not Cutting Room at the end. It was
the West Bank.
Yeah.
But when I saw that movie, and Joan was there when we went to a screening, and when we got to the part about the calendar, when she got my girlfriend Elisa said, "Oh my God, that's you," and that is it's like you're not relevant, you don't matter, no one wants you. and to go back to small clubs, it's the most intimate. You know, you don't have to prove anything, and that's where you start. I mean, I really do think comedy is an intimate thing. I think when you're in a big, huge
You mean like this room?
yeah, exactly. This is a perfect room, you know. But I'm just, you
We'll
know,
welcome you every night to do comedy here. So
okay, not happening. But but yeah, I mean, there's a part in that film too, where and my friend Gary, who actually started working for her when he was in college, and that's how I met her, because she had that shopping show.
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh, Can We Shop?
Can We Shop? And
It was very early.
yeah, and I got to hawk some item with her, and I was like, oh my god. But when she was persona non grata, like the whole thing with Johnny,
Yes.
you know, the fact that every other male host that was sitting in got other offers and took them, and it was fine. And it was like a personal thing against him. But when
and that was when she took a show at Fox,
Right.
Because she saw a memo that had a list of 10 men who were set to possibly replace Carson.
and
right?
and she wasn't
She
one
wasn't,
of them.
yeah.
So of course she did what a guy would do. But
Yep.
and when she got to that very low point where Edgar had passed away and that, you know, no one was hiring her, she literally took her Rolodex and started with A and called every. Is there anything I can do? Is there anything I could do? Do you want me for anything? And she taught me. I do every little stupid television thing. I do everything. I know so many comics are like, hey, I'm not getting up to do that. And she really taught me, you have to do everything. You never know who's listening, you know?
Yeah. Always say yes.
Yes, always.
And so that was, that drove her, that kind of drive to need to perform, to be relevant. Did she ever at any moment kind of step back and say, I'm happy with what I've done, I'm happy with what I've accomplished? Was that ever part of the conversation or
Maybe the last couple years. I think when the movie came out, when she won Apprentice, and she kind of felt a little bit like she was back on top.
And it was Winning Apprentice
It was
that
Winning
brought her back.
Right.
we
into-
won't discuss. Yes, but Winning Apprentice, and that kind of made her relax a little bit, and she would smile. She would eat more. You know, I know growing up, she would just most meals I would have with her would just be 2 Altoids, a couple of Altoids on the
No
big
way.
one. Yes, she would bring out the thing full of Altoids.
So
Yes.
you guys, you would not want to have a meal with her.
She was hilarious over the meal, but you'd look down and be like, wait, what? Like, your plate's still
Yeah.
there. But then by the end, she was having a glass of wine.
Yeah,
was
we had
more
wine in
fun.
between,
She
yeah.
was like eating and
Yeah.
like fun. You know, and she was less like tightly wound, you know, or yeah. And the end, she would kind of laugh and refer to her. She'd be like, okay, I'm an icon. You know, she would laugh and accept that. Whereas before, you know, don't talk about anything, you know, very closely guarded. But just as Judy was saying earlier, I mean, she also deflected everything. So even at our Thanksgiving, we go around and say what you're thankful for, and every single person was always very, very stressful. You have to go around and say what you're thankful for.
And how many people would be at that
I mean, like
Thanksgiving?
sometimes, honestly, like 60, like crazy amounts. I mean, there was tables all the way going down, like card tables, everything, you know, all beautifully dressed. But yes. And the one rule is you could not thank your hostess. You could not say anything nice about Joan. Of course, everybody did, but she just really didn't want to hear it. She was always more interested in what everybody else was up to and deflecting. I mean, when you would have dinner with her, it was hard to get her to even talk anything about what she was doing. And then when she would tell a little bit, because it was so fabulous and all these interesting things. But to go back to your question, really and truly, she kind of loosened up a little bit in her trailing 4 years or so before she died.
I remember when we had spent that
Yeah.
time in between shows, she said, let's do a Vine video. And I had no idea what a Vine video was. I'm like, what's that? It's a new thing that they're doing. And we made some stupid, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, she so knows everything.
She's
yeah.
like my YouTube show
Yeah,
that she had going.
Good. There is, at the end, I just want to make sure we get to some of these pictures that Carolyn so beautifully put
Took me
together.
so
Do you
long
want
to
to tell
do.
us a little bit?
That is Joan and my mom growing up. Joan is to my right, your left, and that's my mom. They both would lie about their ages so much. I did not know who was older. until my mom particularly probably carried that on a little bit more until my mom's death. I really didn't know either of their
Well,
real
I
ages.
thought that was interesting in the thing she said she hardly barely remembered the war, but if she was born in 1933, like
I just went with it. It's fine. Have a good time. And that is the two of them, and that looks like my Grandpa Meyer. And a lot of the pictures are also supplied. I have a cousin here, Sandy Gold. Sandy, if you're here, raise your hand. Where's Sandy? Hi, Sandy. So Sandy provided a lot of these great pictures, so I'm very, very grateful.
I love her last name, Sandy's last name. It's a great name.
Of course, fabulous. And we're related. And I also got a lot of these pictures from a Joan fan, Mrs. Joan Rivers, or Mrs. Joan Rosenberg on Instagram.com.
No way.
Yes, sends me all these pictures. It's like a in-house researcher. It's fabulous. So that is the three of them, and I think that's either a high school or a college graduation. And that's my grandmother, and Joan, I think, getting some award or something. Looks like my grandmother's doing.
Was that true? Do you know when she said that she would do the shows and talk about her mom, and her mom would be in the audience saying it's
totally
absolutely not true?
Yes, my mom was very dignified. And probably half of it wasn't true. Joan would embellish, but yes, that my grandmother was very, very dignified. Yeah. So where was that? This was, I think, Melissa's college graduation party. So, and that was Joan sporting a very 80s look. My grandfather's 80th birthday party. I'm sure this is thrilling for everyone in the audience. And that's a good example of Joan as just really a mensch. She would swoop in anytime a family member or a friend was in trouble or it was a bad time. My father had just died, and we were living in rural Georgia. And Joan came down and stayed with us for several weeks and was just present and just there. Yeah, she was pretty great like that. I mean, when my husband's mother died in 2011, Joan said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but you're coming with us to Vegas. So the funeral had just ended, and she insisted we come out to Vegas because she had a club date. And she's like, you'll get distracted, you can see a play, you can see shows, and just had us so in a whirl, and she had us laughing so much. It was laughter through tears, and that was just her MO. So that was a Hanukkah with my Grandpa Meyer and my mom and me. Oh, and that's Joan. So that's really when she loosened up. So that's her at my wedding dancing the hora. And that's my husband, Michael, who's right there. And there she is at the bat mitzvah of my niece, or b'nai mitzvah. There's two girls, and that's my nephew. And here she is with some relatives on my father's side. This was at my wedding as well. And that is the bat mitzvah. She loved it. She had such a fun time just laughing with my mom at the bat mitzvah and reminiscing about Largemont Temple and all sorts of Jewish things. It was in Reading, Pennsylvania. She came down. She blocked off her calendar. She's like, I am going. She got so Jewish towards the end of her life. You know, every bat mitzvah in the family, every wedding, confirmation, she was there and just had a ball. So the Aliyah, she may have fumbled over some of the Hebrew, but she really had a good time. So and that's Thanksgiving. And those, my two nieces, my nephew, and Cooper, Melissa's son, Cooper, Joan's grandson. And that's the Writers Guild Awards. I help write the awards, and that is Rachel Brosnahan from Mrs. Maisel. So I thought that'd be a cute picture to take. Yeah.
And she's not Jewish.
She's not Jewish. No.
And you know where she's from?
Where?
Wisconsin.
Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You're stuck on this Milwaukee thing.
I mean,
So
if you
goyish.
listen to her stand up in the show,
Yeah.
and then you listen to Joan, early Joan,
Yeah.
it's exactly early Joan.
She told me she studied so
Yeah.
much of Joan, and
You can tell.
Yeah, she was a real fan.
Yeah.
So in what, Judy, I guess this is more of a question for you, but do Jewish comedians still have that edge that kind of came out in the 1960s and was so important for this kind of humor? Is this a generational thing? Was this Jewishness and this kind of, we know from Dan and the Pew survey that Jews think having a sense of humor is more important than
Right.
Jewish law. But is that part of a kind of a historical moment and generation, or what's going on today? Are the Jewish comedians, do they have more of an edge than past? Is it still
I mean, I
exist?
think it's exactly like what's happening in the Jewish religion, you know. There's so much assimilation. There's people don't identify, you know, there's this Judist, or what is that? The Judas,
Oh, Buju.
Buju,
That's a thing. Yes.
I mean, I think it's not all of who they are now. I think it's a part of who they are, And I see that because I do a lot of Jewish gigs. I see synagogues that are like, oh, I guess we now have to embrace, mixed marriages. Oh, I guess we have to bring,
Yeah.
It's everything's changing. Even the services in synagogues are not, I remember like, oh my God, when is this going to be over? And now it's all music and how do we engage everyone? And there's, all this sort of social conscience and I think that what it is to be a Jew has changed. So I think that has also changed in comedy. So I'm basically a throwback, is what I'm trying to say.
And this is a totally wacko question, but it's a question that could only be asked here. We are an archive. We have lots of stories. If you were to create a collection of Joan Rivers and put it in an archive so that future generations can kind of understand who she was, what would you put in that archive, in that collection?
Is it just paper material? Like
I'm thinking it could be audio visual, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious about like objects and paper. Like, what would be the kinds of things?
I mean, the obvious thing is the joke file.
Yes, I was going to say that.
The joke file would be wonderful, and that's such a good representation. But I think just pictures. I'm trying to think about other
Clothing.
Clothing. Oh, and also when she would do stand up, she would do something where she would write on these huge pieces of paper her jokes, and she would walk around. And I don't know, do other stand-ups do that?
I write cards.
Yeah.
And I just write my set out on the card, so it'll just have one word.
And where will that live? Will you be holding that? Or is that
I either have a music stand or I put it on a stool with my water.
Yeah.
And I only refer to it if I, am like, it's so interesting. Like you'll get to a certain point and go, I'm missing something. But yes, I think everyone has. I went to, there's a new museum in Jamestown, the National Comedy Center.
Wasn't that where Lucille Ball is from?
Yes, so that's where she's
they
from.
That weird statue.
Yes, they had the weird statue. And this museum is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And when you walk in, there's notebooks. There's Rodney Dangerfield's notebooks. And I was like, that's my notebook. It's, it's just one little word to, sort of just make our, the connection, yeah. And that's what it's about. It's connecting all the jokes. It's not like we don't remember. It's like, oh, I want to add, I want to add this to that and that to this. But Joan had that file, so she would say, I have a gig, for the, for the Jews. I'm going to pick out all my Jew jokes.
That's such a good point. It would be a way to organize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were like files on like Melissa dating or
right.
Yeah, totally.
It's neat.
Totally, and I think Melissa sometimes gives. They have all the joke cards, but there's a couple ones that are just kind of that she has extras, and she'll give them away to people.
You know what's amazing? When she died, when she was in a coma, when she was in the coma, and then people were like staying outside, and they had a vigil. Melissa bought them all pizza, and
that's so nice.
And then the day of the funeral, they were all waiting, and she bought them all coffee and donuts, and I thought that is so Joan.
She would have loved that.
She was the kindest,
And just kind of an amazing generosity of spirit.
Oh, beyond generous, yeah. And you know what the thing is? You can look at her act and say, oh, she was brash. She had such class. She was one of the classiest people.
And she would only punch upwards.
Right.
So Lester, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask questions and the conversation can continue. The way that it will work is if you have a question, raise your hand, and Shirley, our wonderful program director, will bring you the microphone. But please don't speak unless you have the microphone, and speak closely to the microphone.
Oh, look at everyone get up. Oh, I'm not staying. I have to go. I promised so-and-so that I was going to blah, 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 blah.
I'm starving.
I thought it was going to be over at 8, and we had an 8.
I like your bag.
We had an 8:30 reservation, and I.
Well, it's so hard when they do these programs.
I know.
You know? When
Should
do
I-
you eat?
Okay.
Ooh.
So my question is, in the video, Joan was talking about when she was living at the Barbizon, and her father came and pulled her out. And I was sort of surprised because she was such a trendsetter, and she did so much to advance things for women in such a difficult time. And you know I'm going to bring this up. So did your mother. Your mother was among the first people to graduate from Columbia Law School, was it?
Yes, and she knows this. I know Jennifer from growing up in Philadelphia, and my mom spoke at her school growing up about her law work. And Jen
Right,
went to an
an all-girls school, and it was so profound
Oh,
when
and
her
I love that
mother
you told
came
me
and
that.
spoke to us. She was such an amazing trailblazer, and so I was surprised to hear that about your grandfather, because I assumed there must have been something going on in that family at a time when women were not doing things like that. So what was going on in your
I
grandparents'
mean, my
home
grandparents were
to have two
very
women like
traditional.
that?
I mean, my mother had gone through 1 year of Columbia Law School, and my grandfather said, "You're done. You haven't gotten a husband yet." And so and he said, "I want you to go, you know, the Dirty Dancing place, they would go in the summer and try to," he was like, "I'm using the rest of the money I would pay for law school. You're going here and trying to meet a husband." So my mom said, "No, come on." She already had a legal mind at that point, said, "You've already invested 1 year. Come on. We can do 2 more." So she got him to pay the rest of it. He was so mad that she graduated and had the gall to be single. When she graduated, he refused to go to her graduation. So that's kind of where they came from. You know, it wasn't that they were being mean, they just were looking for security for their daughters. And as you saw in the movie, actress for Joan equaled prostitute. You know, and so Joan had to leave home. She slept in her car for a while, and we had a wonderful Aunt Alice, who was my grandmother's sister, who was very glamorous and lived in the city, and Joan would crash at Aunt Alice's place. And Aunt Alice used to have a salon on Sundays. She had a great apartment. I think it was first on Park Avenue and then eventually Riverside, and she married a dentist who was the dentist to a lot of Broadway stars. So on Sunday, so many interesting people would come over, and growing up, my mom and my aunt would go, and Aunt Alice was like Auntie Mame for them, and that's what Joan was, my Auntie Mame. And so just kind of seeing all of that excitement was terrific, but it was definitely a world away from my maternal grandparents, who were very, very traditional and just not amused. Now, cut to when Joan got famous, and that's my daughter. Yeah. You know, they were backstage with us in Atlantic City and Vegas and Tahoe, and everyone was happy to be a part of it, but it was a little bit rough for them. And
What do you think it was that your grandparents had 2 successful, driven, ambitious, like, did that come from your grandmother? Like, the fact that they had the confidence to say, "Sorry, I'm going to do it my way."
Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? Because
they're Jews.
right, of course, but not all. You know, I know my mother. I asked her, you know, what she would have done if she hadn't had children,
Yeah.
and she said, "What you do."
Oh,
And I thought, oh my God, she would. I know.
that's
I was
so hard to hear.
Yeah, and I thought there's no way, because the first rejection she'd be like, "You're a son of a bitch," you know. But
She sounds awesome.
but she was, you know, of that generation. I have to get married. And I
Yeah.
have to have kids. But what was it about, like, both of them?
I think the whole family was so driven. I mean, I was told a story quite often growing up that the family, as so many families did, came over gradually from Russia. And there was one older sister who came here early. She got a job as a secretary and was waving the bank book on the dock in Ellis Island saying, "I can pay for everybody." You know, so just really everybody was so driven to succeed. So I think even though both parents wanted a very traditional, you know, get married and you're done,
Right.
both girls said, "Hey, wait a second. You know, there's more."
And your mother was very funny as well.
I think she was funnier than Joan. She was hilarious and just very witty, but in a smaller
Right.
milieu.
Right.
You know, so she would take out her humor. For example, when the Mercedes dealership, Joan was very nice and bought her a Mercedes and bought, paid for a lot of wonderful things. When they couldn't fix her car, what did she say to them? How come you could kill 6 million Jews, but you can't? But a carburetor stumps you.
That is hilarious.
So she went definitely off color on the Philadelphia main line, but
Right.
she had a good time.
That is
Were your
funny.
grandparents funny too?
My grandpa Meyer was hilarious.
Oh.
Meyer was the funniest. Beatrice was very refined, and I think it was kind of the two of them are opposite, but Meyer was so funny.
Did she laugh at him, your grandmother?
She did.
Okay.
She did. She appreciated how
Right.
outrageous, he
Yeah.
was.
Oh, hi, I'm Sue Horowitz, and I interviewed Joan Rivers at her home in Bel Air when I was writing my book.
Lucky you. That was a gorgeous place.
It was a gorgeous place, and Edgar was there too, because he was alive at the time. I was writing my book Queens of Comedy, and Joan had she was sharp, funny, nurturing. She made me scrambled eggs.
Oh, she did.
That
was good.
generous. She went out of her way to try to help me. So she had those two sides, that brash, cutting side, but that personal generosity.
She loved writers. She loved Jewish writers, and she loved female Jewish writers. So I can see that you'd be right in her sweet spot, and she would have just adored you and young
She
woman
was
at
right.
the time.
She was very nice to me, and I must have looked hungry because she immediately started offering food.
Well, I hope to read your book. So
Well,
Queens
thank you.
of
That's
Comedy.
very nice of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Having been lucky enough to see Joan in a small club and attack the people the way she did in the film, it didn't feel as if it was an attack. I never felt that way. I felt she was laughing with you, and she had the greatest sense of timing I ever saw, I think, live. I don't know about the television, but I don't know where she got that, but it was unbelievable.
Thank you.
It was an honor to be the subject of her,
Right?
of her humor. It's like when they say when someone imitates you on Saturday Night Live, you've made it.
Totally.
And she was the same thing with her act. If she picked you out, or
Yeah.
it was like a badge of honor.
And then she gave you a plan afterwards.
Right.
She had these huge, these ficus trees she
Yeah.
would drag across the stage. And the
Yeah.
joke was because, as you said, she's so short.
Right.
And so little, these things are so much bigger. I'm very jealous you got to see the show in Provincetown. I was
Oh,
supposed
it
to
was
go.
so-
The one with John Waters was
Yeah.
Amazing.
Because he lives there too. Yeah. It was great.
so jealous.
Yeah, hi, I was just wondering, whatever happened to the joke file? Where is that thing?
The joke file. I
That's
think
right,
it's
the
either at
movie's
Melissa's
huge.
house or it's in storage, and I hope it's not like the Indiana
So,
Jones movie.
They should
I
do that would be a great exhit at the
Smithsonian.
the museum, the
Or
comedy museum.
I know a wonderful
Yeah.
place
Oh
that
God!
Just,
has wonderful archives.
Not until I
and-
take pictures of all those jokes. Okay?
Right?
Fun, you can
so it's
come
being
in.
taken care of or something, it's not?
I know it's being worked on. I think I know.
Graham. Yeah.
Graham is on it.
Yeah.
They're figuring out where it's going to go. So, but I will. Yeah. I will make a play for this institution. You guys have such great stuff here.
Thank you. She'd be in such good company. So.
Hi. I just want to mention how much one of my friends enjoyed working with her at God's Love We Deliver. She was very dedicated, and especially around holiday time, they really looked forward to her presence there.
Oh, she loved God's Love We Deliver. It was so important to her.
She would
You
do that
know,
every
I have to
Thanksgiving,
say,
right?
as a gay, she was the first person in the '80s to
Yes.
put gay. She would put drag queens on her show,
Yeah.
and she was so good to that community, especially during the AIDS crisis. But when she had a TV show, she put gay people on that show.
Such a good point. She loved gay people. I remember being in Las Vegas. I must have been in grade school or something. I'd go see her show, and then afterwards we would be in the gay clubs till like 4
Yeah.
or 5 in the morning.
Right.
And she'd be dancing. She was so happy.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, one time I remember we skated down the strip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Hi. I was reminded when you mentioned that a friend of mine was involved with organizing an AIDS benefit, and it was a celebrity cocktail party, and it was a blizzard that night, and none of the celebrities showed up except for Joan, and all she was supposed to do was like a 15-minute set. When she came, she said, "How's it going?" And they said, "Oh my God, everyone wants their money back because nobody's here." And so instead of just doing her set, she worked the room, and she spent the whole night there, made sure everyone got a picture, everyone got a face-to-face time with her, and she saved the benefit.
That's so nice.
My favorite story about her. But
That's so who she was.
Yeah. What is it that you miss the most about her?
I just miss, I mean, it's so stupid how funny she was, but I miss talking about current events with her and just sending her just random texts and hearing back and forth and be like, oh, that was so goyish. You know, and just exchanging little jokes. Be like, didn't they look awful? Or what, you know, just kind of gossiping with her. And, she would just, in her emails to me, put on some makeup.
Right. Do you think, how do you think she would have dealt with Trump since, because of the, Apprentice really helped her. His behavior,
I mean, he is against so many things that she holds dear.
Right.
So I can't imagine, that she would have held back, and it would have added so much to her act. Can you imagine what she'd be saying about Melania?
I think about it all the time. About
every
Melania.
event in Kavanaugh and how
Yeah.
he likes beer.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I wish I could go
I
see
know.
that set.
Yeah.
He's so good. And there's she would just have such a funny perspective, and to be able to see the set at the West Bank every week would be amazing. Just hear her take on current events.
Right.
Quick question for Judy. Do you remember the story about Bob and Joan Rivers?
Oh.
Could you tell that? Because I think it's really telling about the personality.
So my friend Bob Smith, who recently passed away from ALS, he had a joke. Was she on the? He was on her show, and he did a joke.
Thank you.
Oh right, yeah, that's right. You can tell the story because.
Yeah.
And also
Totally.
he had a joke. I told my family that I was gay during Thanksgiving. I made my carefully worded announcement at the Thanksgiving table. I said to my mother, "Would you please pass the gravy to a homosexual?" And she passed it to my father. And Joan wrote, and she passed it to my father. She told him to say that.
Really? She
Yeah.
gave him. That's really funny.
Yeah.
He sounds like he was great.
Oh, he was so
Bob
funny.
Smith?
Bob Smith, yeah, and 5 novels. 2 books of essays, and then he's an amazing author. You would love his stuff.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to buy his stuff.
Yeah.
So sounds awesome.
So I think we're out of questions. I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, Caroline Waxlar for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Judy
This was
Gold.
fun. This was an honor to be with Judy
Oh my
Gold.
God,
This
you're
is
the best.
Love.
We will have, in November, we're going to have a program on Jean Carroll, who is an important female comedian from the 1950s, and she'll be in conversation with one of the writers from the Mrs. Maisel show. And we have a Bali show coming up in March, so keep your eyes tuned to what we're doing, because we want to continue these conversations about Jewish women comedians at the American Jewish Historical Society. We have a small reception outside. It's cookies. They're not gluten-free.
Are they kosher? Are they parv? Ugh, that means they're dry.
But please, thank you so much for coming. And if you like these programs and would like to see programs like these continue, I invite you to contribute to our nonprofit, and we'll keep doing them. But thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for having me.